Well, hello again, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Healthy Christian Leader Show. My name is Jake. I am a guest host in for Dwight again this week. And we have Tim Smith back on the show with us. Thanks for being here again, Tim. We had you on recently to talk about holistic health and well-being and who we are as integrated human beings. And today, we want to focus in on our physical health as ministry leaders, pastors, leaders. It's something that can be easily ignored. And so, you know, we all know that physical health matters. We have lots of science around it. We have lots of messaging around it. We're not shy on information about our physical health. But it's often the first thing that gets ignored, sometimes for good reason, like we're sacrificing ourselves to care for others, or we're just pushing out extra hours to care for others. But why is this detrimental when we ignore the needs of our physical health, even for good reasons? Why is this detrimental to our well-being overall?
Yeah, I'm going to jump back to our conversation that we had a few weeks ago and center it in whose image we're made. And I think one of the things that's most gripped me about humanity and about our embodied humanity, that we're literally human beings in bodies. We're so limited in our bodies, right? Like I can't be over there and over here, right? And I have to eat again in like an hour, right? So there's sharks that eat once a year, snakes that eat once a month. For some reason, God made us as these beings that constantly have needs. We're constantly dependent. So as I watch Jesus, you know, in a human body, this is the thing that's most gripped me, I think, about his incarnation. He actually became a human forever. And I've just sat with that. I don't know when it was, some time ago now, but it feels so fresh when I think about him. Like, man, it's just dawning on me for the first time, even though it's been several years I've been sat with this. Like, he became a human forever. And somehow we think we can kind of push our humanity back. In fact, we probably should, because there's other things to get done. I heard an individual that I know, I was actually doing some classes, and this individual in the Youth with a Mission Circle said, we treat our humanity like dirt. I mean, it literally is made from dirt, but as God breathed into that dirt, and we're, you know, living beings we are. But he said, we treat it like dirt. And while we're busy running from our humanity, we look over our shoulder and Jesus is running into his. And it's just this sense of like, how do I relate to a Jesus? How do I relate to a God who's actually fully embraced humanity forever, not just 33 years, but forever, and embraced humanity to the point of death on a cross, and then coming to life again, resurrecting in a human body, handle me and see. Like, how do I interact with him if I'm pushing my own humanity and my own body as part of that humanity as something less than? And how do I, because it's literally how I carry around all of me, now how all of me came to the room today, how do I say I'm going to bring you my mind, you know, and my emotions. I'm going to be heartfelt in what I share, you know, and I'm going to bring the Spirit of God with me and my own spirit, you know, that spark of life from God. And I'm going to, you know, bring my relationships. The people aren't in the room, but I do recognize that their relationships affect me, like my wife, you know, who I, you know, said goodbye to before I came, and my kids who wanted, you know, 13 kisses before I left, you know, and you know, I'll bring that into the room. But then somehow, like you say, as leaders, we're like, but the body? you know? It's this lack of integration, which is, as we were chatting before, the ministry of reconciliation is Jesus reconciling all things, not to within Tim, but to himself, right? So there is a center that is a solid core, right? That is being reconciled to. It's not just me kind of, you know, trying to bring all the parts of me back to the center, but actually centered around Jesus, the embodied Jesus, you know, the triune God who's chosen to live in a human body forever. That's kind of where I start, you know, with why is this important? And because it's so central to the relationship with the God that we are serving, and not just serving as some kind of servant. He said, I've called you friends. You spend time with your friends. You spend time with your friends in person, right?
That's great. And, you know, we want to talk about the importance of our physical bodies. It's like Pete Scazzaro says, you can't be spiritually healthy if you're emotionally unhealthy. And, you know, we do need to take more seriously our physical health, how it's going to feed other parts of our health and vice versa. So to start really practically, let's say someone, hears us or just God is really getting their attention, like, yeah, I need to take this side of myself more seriously. I've pushed that part of myself to the limits too often. Or what are some ways they can begin to actually take some steps to take their physical health, their physical side more seriously?
Yeah, when we were talking about the integration of the different parts of ourself, I talked about communication, and I think that's where this begins. There's an author I really have appreciated talking about the body and many more things, Try Softer, Andy Kolber.
My wife is literally reading this book right now. Yeah.
So that's awesome. And she's been so helpful in many areas. You're mentioning emotions, but she has an entire chapter devoted just to the body. And she and others that I like to listen to, Kurt Thompson, psychiatrist, who's really beautifully bringing the gospel and science in such alignment.
Yes, he is.
For the healing from trauma.
Yeah.
But really it's living healthy as humans. But so the two of them and others that I listen to will have this phrase that we need to listen to our bodies. Right? We might we say we listen to Jesus, listen to our close friends, listen to our wife, listen to our kids. We're learning to listen to our mind and our emotions, right? There's a stigma on mental health is thankfully lifting some as we have conversations about, like we might not see it like we see our bodies, like we see a broken leg, but we need to listen to what's going on. We need to listen to our bodies. And our bodies actually, they're what we carry around. They're what carry us around, all of us.
Yeah.
But they literally are communicating all the time.
Yeah.
And they're actually telling us things about what's going on in our emotions, about what's going on in our mind, about what's going on in our spirit. Interestingly, you go back to Proverbs, actually, the Old Testament, Proverbs is where it really centers for me. So we talk about the importance of the mind and the heart, and we can think of whatever proverb is top of mind for you in speaking of the mind and heart. But that word in Hebrew is actually the gut.
Yeah.
So we didn't come from this place where we think of it now as hierarchical, like in my cranium, I have a brain that's telling the rest of me what to do. We've taken that and then thrown it into theology, and we see God as this top-down, hierarchical being, and then the God we were saying earlier, the God that we understand and worship is the God we become. We literally become like what we worship, and so we become these beings that are top-down. But actually, that's not like Andy will talk about in her book, talking about the body. Literally, when our bodies, this is like in the last couple of decades neuroscience, but when our bodies are first wiring up in the womb, as our brains that are in our cranium are forming, the neurons that are forming into our brains are actually seeding throughout the body.
Wow.
So there's actually neurons, for example, around our heart that are in communication with. Like our entire being is connected. And so even if it's telling us about, ouch, I stepped on a pebble, that's important to listen to and not just keep forging our way ahead. We get that. But listening to our body actually has so much more to tell us than just what's happening, for example, beneath the sole of our foot, stepping on that stone. It's telling us so many things. I imagine Jesus, in that time away with his Father, going into, that quiet place and actually experiencing, we watch it on an intense level when he's sweating drops of blood.
Yeah.
Right? He has this interaction with his experiences that is very physiological. So, yeah, our bodies are constantly speaking. I think one place that I want to start for myself is just listening.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So listening to the body. I think, what I would maybe add to that about practical places to start, if you're wanting to take seriously your physical health, is to start very small and simple.
Yes.
I know for me, I tried to get into running for years and years and couldn't do it. And I actually listened to a podcast that talked about your first runs should actually be almost too easy, and that actually was such a game changer for me. I remember just trying to bite off too much too soon.
Right.
And getting exhausted, and then I just would come home exhausted after trying to run and think like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not putting myself through that again.
Right.
And so I'd shelf it for months or weeks or however long, and when I just took baby steps, that made such a difference for me. And so, like you say, listening to your body, but then I think, and even as I've progressed as a runner, the hardest thing over time is patience with yourself. And so listening to your body, and then I think also like being patient with yourself is huge as you start to take those first steps,
right,
and growing from there. Yeah.
Everything that we grow, we need to scale it.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And we can be prone as human beings. And as leaders especially, right, we're like, hey, we're supposed to take life by the horns and go with it, and we throw ourselves into things, but scaling it allows us to say, hey, there's steps to this process. A friend who runs marathons, he was just telling me a few days ago, so he's pulling from Atomic Habits, basically what you're talking about in the book Atomic Habits, but like that you need to scale it and start small and work your way up. But then he said when he's training, which he's just been training for a marathon, he said, if you miss a day or you feel like you get up and you're just like, oh my goodness, he said, you just literally get dressed as if you're gonna go running. And even that is just engaging, it's getting the dopamine or whatever in your brain, like, oh, I'm doing this thing. And then even if you don't get that run, or he said, if you get 1 mile instead of the 10 you were supposed to run today, they say that keeps you going. So it's scaling it, and it's being patient with yourself, but it's also committing to the thing, but not necessarily to the scale that you might eventually want to be at, but I'm just going to do this, and try it, and go again, and getting people around us.
So talking about limitations, in the West, in the Christian faith, in the Christian community, we have often overemphasized the health of our souls, the state of our souls, the nature of our souls, and probably downplayed the state of our bodies. And thankfully, in the last decade, or more than a decade now, there's been a re-emphasis on the body and our whole selves. And the incarnation of Christ points to the fact that our bodies actually matter. As you said in our last conversation, Christ incarnate means material matters. Our bodies matter. And I feel like we're waking up to that in the Western church. But there's still those frustrations with our limitations. Why should we as leaders actually embrace and celebrate the vulnerabilities of our bodies and the limitations of our bodies?
When I think about Jesus, he is incarnate, right? He becomes human. But more than that, he actually allows himself to be a broken human. So 11 years ago on our honeymoon, my wife was hit by a snowmobile. It's a traumatic story, and she had breaks in her legs, and we went through a journey. It's been our journey. To this day, there's pain and there's challenge, but incredible amount of healing. As we've gone through that healing process, we've gone through experiencing pain, because we often might think, okay, well, I want to have this embodied experience and pay attention to my body, but without the pain part. But it's actually listening not only to what our bodies are telling us about, oh, this will feel good and do that, but actually listening to all of it. The experience that we've had, the depth that we've grown, my wife and I, in relationship with each other, but also with Jesus, has been exponential through the pain. And I think anybody who's had serious pain knows that can happen.
Wow.
And I would want people that are experiencing pain to know that can happen if they haven't experienced it. Henry Nouwen, and I brought his book too, because these are two authors that are just so foundational for me. In his book, The Life of the Beloved, understanding who we are as the beloved of God has to do with understanding that we are broken, finite, and gifted human beings. That's from Andrew Murray. But we are broken, finite, and gifted. But Henry Nouwen talks about how our lives are actually taken and blessed.
Wow.
Broken and given. It's actually in our being broken often that God is doing the greatest give. So it's this embracing the whole experience of being human. I'm the last one to want any pain. I wake up with a little headache and I'm like, how do I do my day, right? And my wife's like, well, I have a lot of ongoing pain on a lot of days, but it's that experience of having Jesus meet us and then needing others. So Andrew Murray's comment that we're broken, finite, and gifted. We have gift and it doesn't go away because we're broken. But we need others because we're finite. Like, I don't have everything. And so actually embracing my humanity, the fullness of my humanity, broken, finite, and gifted, taken, broken, blessed, broken, and given, means that I actually end up needing other people. I end up going into community and finding that it's together. John 17, and the gospel is really being lived in and out of my life.
Wow. Well, that's beautiful what you said about the limitations of pain and suffering actually leading to growth in new ways. ministry is actually physically demanding. Like we think about ministry a lot of times as sitting at a desk or sitting, praying, reading, meditating, maybe having coffee with people. But actually, it's demanding work. I mean, just what our brains need to operate, to be nourished. Also, if you are involved in the community, there's just a myriad of ways to do physical work in ministry, loading boxes at a food bank or helping someone with yard work, whatever it is. You can think of all the many ways. It's physically demanding work. I never thought of that. What might it look like, as ministers or just ministry leaders to take seriously that ministry is demanding? What might be possible if we took that seriously and actually prepared for it?
Right. So there's the reality that we might be moving boxes and put our back out because we've been busy not working out, not paying attention to our body, or sitting at a computer or whatever it is in other parts of our work. And my work in ministry right now can be that, where I'm quite static, and then all of a sudden I get up to do something. I'm like, I can do this. Yeah. So there's that, and I find fascinating. I kind of like to nerd out a little bit on neuroscience and what's going on in our bodies. Even when we're static, when we're going through deep things with other people, when we're sitting, there's actually physiologically things going on in our bodies. So there's hormones that get released, like cortisol, stress hormone, right? Which it's only going to get flushed out properly when I go and do some exercise, right? And drink some water. So there is the fact that we need to care for our physical bodies, and we might suddenly put them through some duress because we're suddenly called to go and help somebody physically. But beyond that, there's the fact that our bodies are carrying things. We've been talking about how everything's integrated.
Yeah.
What's happening in my mind, in my emotions, in my relationships is absolutely physiologically, neurobiologically affecting my body. And my body needs to be able to work through that in an appropriate way.
That's incredible. I didn't think of that, but I've experienced it. And that is like to be able to release what you're carrying emotionally, mentally, as pastors and leaders and caregivers to other people. Yeah, that's so great. And it's funny you say that, because I mentioned about being a runner, and one of the metaphors I've used when I talk to people about running is it's a mental shower. I go out and I run, and usually in the evening, and I just feel things that are built up in my body, in my mind. Literally, I feel them being released.
You remember Jesus and his best friend dies, right? And he's just in the will of the Father, so he stays 3 days. He comes and everybody's weeping, and culturally that's what they do. So he does join in. Jesus weeps.
Yeah.
His friends are sad, so he has compassion, so he weeps. But what's hit me lately, Jesus wept. He was actually letting his body physiologically go through what it needed to go through in the moment.
Wow.
And you may not know this, but I learned, it's absolutely fascinating, that we have this in our trauma care training. Tears of grief are actually releasing hormones that, if they stay in our body, are toxic.
Wow.
So toxins released from tears of grief. Wow. So our bodies, that's just one thing, right? And you talked about going for a walk or a run and getting your brain organized. So you've got a left brain and a right brain, right? And here's a really simple one, because we do this in our training. So your thumb, maybe you didn't know this, I just learned this. So your thumb on each hand is actually connected to the other side of your body. You know how other side of your brain. So you know how your right brain is controlling left side, left brain, right side, but your thumbs are actually opposite, right? From that. And so if you go like this and just touch your fingertips with your thumb, so you can try it, you're actually integrating your left and right brain. The same thing's happening when you're going for a walk. Now your right brain is the creative brain, your ability to come up with some new way. Your left brain is your logical, linear, and I'm going to do things the way that I know how and get this job done in order. Those two need to work together. There's actually a book written called The Other Half of Church.
Yes.
Where we've literally left out the right brain creative people. Yep. They go into nonprofits and do amazing stuff. And it's like, where are they in the local church? You know, the apostolic leaders and, so we want to see integration. Yeah. It literally takes our body moving. I mean, you can take this theologically and say, hey, as the church, we have to actually move out and start moving our legs, church, because then we're going to get integrated. But I know we're talking about our physical bodies, so that left-right thing. And one more throw in with the brain, because we've got top brain, in our training we call it upstairs and downstairs brain, just to make it simple. But your prefrontal cortex is where all that thinking it through and processing and everything happens right here behind your forehead. Your lower brain or downstairs brain is keeping you alive. It's your breathing and your heart rate, also what, will fight the bear if he comes in the door. Your fight, flight, freeze and all that. Those two get disintegrated when we go into fear states. We can be carrying hard things for people and with people. We have something we talk about called the compassion continuum, which ends in burnout, right? But it starts with compassion fatigue. Well, it starts with compassion satisfaction, where we're caring for people and, it's giving us life and, our bodies, brains, beliefs, biology, all of us is kind of engaged and we're receiving what we need from God and engaging with this person. But very easily the scale gets tipped. We start carrying things. As leaders, we carry so much for other people, so much. And we feel we're supposed to.
Yep.
And then add to that what we've been talking about. We've actually been taught to, body bad, spirit good.
Yep.
So we kind of push down our bodies. We're missing out.
Yes.
And missing out is just a light way to say it.
Yes.
We are really missing out. We're not seeing our brain integrated, left to right, top to bottom. So this is our survival brain. How many of us get in this survival state where we're just trying to make it? As Andy Colbert calls it, white knuckling. We're just trying to make it.
Yeah.
How many people are burning out in ministry right now?
Yeah.
How many leaders in the church, that's Barna and everybody else is coming up with these stats and you're like, oh, it stresses me out to read the stats, right? But we are made to actually move through these things. Jesus sweat, drops of blood, and he moved through physiologically. He wept and let toxins come out of his body. He's going to raise Lazarus in 5 minutes. But right now, his body needs to grieve.
Wow.
Because he is sad. So where do we go for that walk? Where do we let ourselves just weep? Where do we let ourselves get that healthy snack to get our blood sugar back up so we're not hangry when the next person walks in? No, we're going to, we're just going to pray, and let the next person in the door for counseling. It's go get that snack. Drink water. When we don't drink water, this comes from our training, but when we don't drink water, we get dehydrated. When we're dehydrated, our brains are working at 10 to 20% less capacity.
Wow.
And when we don't have our blood sugar up, we know what happens there with the hangry, like I mentioned, and we're not ourselves, right?
Yes.
We're not really the fruit of the Spirit.
Yes.
Fruit grows on a vine when the vine has roots in the soil, really bringing up. So it's so tangible. I know I've gone down a bunch of paths, but it was kind of peppering the conversation a bit with some of the things that have fascinated me from neuroscience and from the physiology of our body. That literally what you're doing when you take that walk is nourishing yourself, but also the next person that walks into your room. We have to do this. It's not, do we? And I think a lot of us do these things. Some of us do them just sort of naturally.
Yep.
Ever put your hand on your forehead like this when something came to you? You actually have a pressure point up there. Better than hitting your head. I stopped hitting my head and just hold your head and take the time to pray.
Wow.
Integrate your spirit and your body, because there's a pressure point there, and if you hold it nice and firm for 10 seconds, it actually can calm your body down.
Wow.
Same thing with breathing. Breathing is integrating our parasympathetic and our sympathetic neural systems, right?
Yeah.
Neurosystems. So the parasympathetic, we've had this reaction, and a parasympathetic comes and says, I can help your entire being calm. We're going to be much more present to our 3-year-old or the person that just walked into the office or that person we're going across the street to serve if we are actually integrated. So, when we just take a deep breath.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
100% agree. I've experienced it, the before and after.
Yeah.
The before of doing so little, pushing everything to the limit physically.
Right.
Not pushing in the way of doing too much, but just ignoring, pushing things to the limit of ignoring what I needed for release, and then thankfully getting into a routine of taking my body seriously, and I've just experienced it. As we close, Tim, tell us some surprising gifts the Lord has given you as you've taken the needs of your body seriously.
Yeah. I remember in the training that we have, we talk about self-care, kind of in this idea of taking care of the whole being. And we talk about it not being a reward, but a requirement. And it's just this gift saying, God saying, I've designed you this way. Receive this from me. I think I'm bringing it super simple, even to the practices I was just talking about. Literally learning to breathe.
Yeah.
It's like, Oh, yeah, what's surprising? Learning to breathe. There's all that's physiologically, neurobiologically going on inside me, but I was actually getting some osteo treatments, and my osteopath doesn't know Jesus yet, or is on a journey. But she was teaching me. She said, take some deep breaths, and I'm breathing. She's like, you're breathing from your chest. I'm like, yeah, that's how I breathe. I think that's how some people are, right? And she's like, well, you kind of have this posture where you're just like, really, you gotta kind of control everything. And I was like, yeah. And I wear a mouth guard at night because I carry stress and carry it in my body. And she's like, try breathing from your belly and just like saying you don't have to be in control of everything. And of course, in my heart, I'm engaging the Holy Spirit, right, in that moment. And I've been practicing just breathing deep breaths with my belly and just feeling my body physiologically, but also mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually, finding this place of release, of I don't have to be in control of everything. And it's like that simple reminder. So it's a surprising thing because it's so small, and has been so powerful in allowing me to get to places where I've been like, God, like help me not to be so stressed, and carry so much anxiety, which is a great prayer. But now there's reconciliation happening in my being, and God is saying, just breathe. Jesus was so physically present everywhere he went. And I think that power of presence, if we're ending on something, like, to me, it's that the power of presence is what ministry is. And so it's being present to myself, all the parts of myself, present to the others around me, in the presence of Jesus, the presence of his Spirit, in the presence of the Father. It's just practicing presence. Like Henry Nouwen and others would speak to, this idea of just practicing presence is so powerfully shaping. And then I bring my body. What does my body need right now? I need to go for that bike ride. Because I'm present with my body, I know that I need that. And then I'm present with the next person that comes in the door. Yeah.
Wow, Tim. Well, thank you for sharing passionately and from experience, and just really appreciate you being here with us to share this. And there's so many great resources out there, obviously. Feel free, please, to get in touch if you would like to hear more from us here or from Tim. But thank you for joining us again this week on the show. We hope that this has encouraged you in your calling as a faithful leader in Christ's kingdom, and blessings with you on this week.
Well, thanks for joining this conversation. I trust that you were encouraged and challenged by the stories and experiences that were shared today. Would you join us next week? You can find new episodes weekly in video form on the Aaron Ministries YouTube page and in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. Aaron Ministries is an interdenominational network of friends in ministry with a mission to foster healthy Christian leadership. Check out our website, aaronministries.com, for more information and resources, and on how you can donate to our ministry and potentially start a healthy Christian leader gathering in your area. Until we meet again, may you experience the Lord's blessing, grace, and peace. I'll see you next week.